Good morning all. I've just been walking along the track bed of the London and North Western Railway as it comes out of Oundle and heads across towards Peterborough, Mean Valley Railway, and I'm just approaching what used to be Elmington Crossing. Very little to see, all gone, but occasional bit of debris, railway debris like that railway sleeper. The railway itself would have been running alongside me on the other side of that fence. I'm just coming down towards Elmington Crossing, which is between the A605 and Cotterstock. Pretty much here, I would say, more or less in front of me here before we reach that gate in the background was Elmington Crossing signal box. The line closed, I think it was 1972 in effect, so the signal box would have been here until the late 70s. The line, I think, opened 1845, was it? I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong. 1845 to 1972. I just wanted to see what's left of the level crossing gates because I've driven past this before and noticed the old posts that the crossing gates used to stand on. Hang on, sorry. Okay, this is where the crossing was, and these posts are where the gates used to hang. I was trying to work out the other day whether it was just a single gate on each side of the road or two gates, but it's clearly a single gate because the gate would have hung off that and would have run across to the other post. It'll be the same the other side, I assume. Still standing, and the other post is covered in ivy, I assume. If it's still there at all, it is there, it's just covered in ivy. We're looking straight down the track bed now, pretty much down those tracks in the middle of the field. And on the horizon is the village of Tansor, and it's the village of Tansor that I'm heading to next, and I'll see you next when we reach Main Street in Tansor Village. Welcome to Tansor Village. I know very little about Tansor Village, but I drive through it a lot and there always looks to be some interesting buildings at the side of the road. I don't think this will be a big one, but I'm intrigued by those buildings. I'm going to get out and have a look and try and make sense of whatever I can find in the village itself. Dates back to Domesday Book, same story, agricultural settlement, and yeah, same as all the other villages really. So I've got to find a railway first to pick up where we just left off at Elmington. It must be somewhere nearby. Building on the right here is the old school, 1866. I think it only closed in, I think it was 1970. Wasn't enough pupils to go there, it's now the village hall. Lovely little building. That's Linden Hall, as it says on the gate posts. Very nice, used to be the rectory. But when it stopped being the rectory, they had to change the name because the diocese says you've got to get rid of the name rectory or old rectory, and it just became Linden Hall. One hell of a rectory is all I can say. Fantastic building. So we're coming up to the railway bridge. Bridge Cottage South. That's the view off the bridge of the old track bed. You cannot see a whole lot, but it's down there as it heads off towards the Mean Valley Railway as we know it today. at Wansford. Some way off yet. That is an old Ordnance Survey, what they call them, benchmark. You find these dotted around all over the country. Apparently there's 500,000 of them. And there are people that spend their lifetime trying to find them all. Quite random. They were used to fit a device in to try and work out your distance or your height above sea level. And that's all they did. It was just a consistent place to put a tool that fitted in there. Or on there, I don't really know. That determined that your height, as I say, above sea level, presumably for mapping purposes. Ordnance Survey benchmark. There you go. Very hard to find details about some of the buildings here. Very few of them are listed. It's a case of digging around, seeing what you can find, looking on census returns. I've done the best I can to try and work out what some of these were once. This building on the right with the red roof, which is Jasmine's Cottage, or Jasmine Cottage, used to be a carpenter's shop back in the 1800s, and it was also a brew house at one point. Brewed their own beer and could sell it on the premises. Not as a pub, you'd probably go and knock on the door and buy it, but yeah, it was a brew house. Unusual collection of histories in that one. And it's been around a bit. Jasmine Cottage, very nice. Got some old buildings coming up thick and fast now on the left, where you've got that low single-storey building. And then the taller one behind it. That used to be a pub. There used to be two pubs here, in fact, unbelievably. That was the Black Horse. And there's a White Horse further along the street, but that was the Black Horse pub. Whether it was both buildings, I don't know. I think it goes back a long time. I don't think that's been around for a while, but that was the Black Horse pub. Opposite is Tansor House, which is a 2-into-1 jobby. It's got a date stone, which you probably can't see, but it's up on that wall. And it says, if I can squint, I think it says 1721. It's believed to be older, believed to go back to the 1600s, that one. Black Horse, it does say on the wall. A whole row of thatched farm worker cottages, as were, going up there. 1600s, some of those, very old. Rosedene I can tell you nothing about, apart from it's got a date stamp of 1860 up above. And they're still coming. That white door used to be a stable door, because that low building there used to be the blacksmith's. That's the Smithy thatch end cottage now. That white door would be where you take your horse in. The tall building on the right there is the other pub. Not the Black Horse, but the White Horse. Used to have a bakery round the back of it. It says online that the bakery ovens are still there today, so we're not going to see them, presumably around the back. But yeah, that's the White Horse pub. We'll try and see it around the other side. I put up an old picture from about, it must be 100 years ago, showing that building when it was the post office. As you can see, not a lot has changed. St Mary's, Tansor. Let's go and see what the church has to offer. It's a lovely cross. Made it look like an old medieval cross, even though it's not. I think it was erected in 1920, if I recall, just after the Great War. The brave men who died in that war, the commemoration of those being its purpose. Like all the other churches, Norman Church, 11th century, modified 12th, 13th, 14th, and again, like all the others, quite dramatically modified, particularly inside. In the 1800s, not used a whole lot now apparently, and under a little bit of a threat. Doesn't have its own resident vicar, as it were. It's part of the grouping under Warmington Church, along with a couple of others, and I think they do 2 services. I think I read 2 services a month. So yeah, still hanging on, but only just. Very nice Norman tower with little Norman windows on it. It's quite a big Norman arch at the top of the bell tower. Looks like a Norman arch anyway. Some very impressive stones. As with Cottesstock, it's another church. We're looking at the base of the tower at the moment. It's another church that's likely to have been built on top of another previous, earlier stone, Anglo-Saxon stone church prior to this one. And one or two have said yes, it's herringbone masonry that would be classic of an Anglo-Saxon church. I don't know. As close as you can get to a herringbone. Series of stones. It's that with the sort of different, different setting to the other stones around it. I don't know. It says in the history books there's herringbone masonry, small amounts of herringbone masonry in this location. It's got to be those. The inference being there was something here before this church, and this has been incorporated into it. Not sure why that would be, but that's what they say. Some very strange windows. That one up there, I mean, yeah. Why did they go to the effort of putting that in that location? Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. James Bradshaw, clerk of this parish, who died October 1875. Sarah, wife of the late Captain Miller. Does it say RN at the end? I can't really see. Also Agnes Sarah Tucker Miller, daughter of the above. No dates. On the 27th day of January 1862, age 77, and on the 8th day of January 1894, age 73. I'll see if I can find some info out on those. If I do, I'll add them to the bottom of the screen. Let's pick a random grave to look into in loving memory of Esther, the beloved wife of Charles Pitts, who fell asleep August the 16th, 1905, aged 67. Also of Charles Pitts. So they're buried together, who fell asleep April the 19th, 1921, aged 77. I'll see what I can find out about those two and add it to the bottom of the screen. Certainly a nice setting for a resting place. I think it's one of these churches with a Norman portion at the bottom, because that's a Norman window with the rounded arch at the top, and the top level is more recent. The windows have got pointed arches, which is later than Norman. That's been added on at a later point. Each one of those windows comes from a different architectural period, 100 years plus apart. It's a right mixed bag, like so many churches are. That's a strange one. The window doesn't really go with the archway that's been fitted in. That window's been filled in, and then a smaller, thin, pointy window has been added in the centre. That arch above it, being a single piece rounded, is Norman. That'll be dating back to the 12th century, if not a bit earlier. But the window's a little bit more recent, I would suggest. It's a botched job. Similar with that one, I think. The arch at the top is a sort of classic Norman type decoration, but the windows are later. So I think it's been filled in and then the windows added. Might be wrong. It actually looks like that's the case though. The two don't go. Not very often I get to get inside one of these churches. So a quick wander. I feel under pressure to tell you what's what now, and insides of churches is something I know nothing about. Definitely some Norman, is that Norman? I don't know. It looks like it is. That arch looks Norman with the decoration around it. It's classic sort of late Norman period. What I do know is definitely Norman. The arches at the bottom there with the decoration, although the decoration isn't Norman, they are Norman. The way you can tell is if you look at the arch with the decoration at the top, it's a sort of single, smooth semicircle. And the later post-Norman periods, they're pointy, you see at the top, because they realised those single sort of smooth arches didn't carry much load. They weren't, and they were difficult to move. I mean, they're often great big single pieces, sorry, of archway stone, whereas these can be done in two parts, as they have been. So that's more recent than the Norman ones. And Normans loved all this sort of decorative stuff, even though that painting is more recent from what I recall. Same on this side. Perfectly smooth, round Norman arches. Now that's a botch job, or it's not a botch job. That is a very, very nice Norman doorway, Norman archway at the top. You can see the rounded arch, but they made it smaller by bricking it in slightly at the top or stoning it in and putting a more recent arch inside it. So there's probably 200 years difference between the one at the top and the one below it. But the one at the top is old, 1100s probably, Norman stonework, very nice. Can't tell you anything about the font. Was not expecting to get in here. A rare privilege. This decorated archway, which I don't know. I think it's Norman. I'm sure I read somewhere it was Norman, but people are intrigued by the fact that it kind of doesn't join very well at the top. And people have said, well, either the builder got it wrong and miscalculated with his patterning, with those crosses, and it just didn't meet up, or this has been moved from somewhere else, and maybe it was a single arch somewhere else. They chopped it in half down the middle, put it back together again, but because it's a smaller usage now, it just doesn't work. But yeah, the decorations don't fit, particularly the top ring of row, of decoration. It just doesn't really join up. Something's not right, and we'll never know. We'll never know what it's about. It looks like it's potentially an older arch, even above it, but even that doesn't look right. Bit of a mystery. It's an absolute clonker of a gravestone here. I mean, let's see if I can get some details. That is a slab and a half. In memory of John Siddons, who died 1850, and also of Elizabeth Siddons, who died 1864, aged 72. That is a mighty big piece of stone. This was the bit that whenever I drive through Tansor always attracts my attention. This fantastic entryway. And it's an entryway to Tansor Court, which just looks fantastic. I'm going to try and get some footage a little bit later over the wall if I can. If not, I'll put a photo up. But it's a pretty astonishing bit of architecture, and it's not that old. 1850s, I think. Used to be a rectory till I think 1903. What a rectory. Now, I think it's a house or an office or something, but that is impressive. Looks like it's about another 500 years older than it really is. Tansor Court. Just a pity you can't see anything. I'm going to throw the camera over the wall though. That's some point and see what I can get. Just hard to believe it's only 1850s. It just looks so much older. Trying to get rid. I'm going to try and get down to the Manor house now, which I think is down this road. What used to be the Manor house actually goes back in parts to the 1500s, which makes it exceptionally old. Always updates, always. So bits of it are more recent, but parts of it definitely go back to the 1500s, which makes this one exceptionally old. There it is. Very nice. Tansor Manor house. That rather old looking building at the end is Manor Cottage. They used to have a thatch. Dates to 1648, there's a date stamp on it apparently. It says 1648. Again, been modernised since, but used to have a thatch. Probably would look nicer with a thatch. Used to have collie western slate, but yeah, that's an old one. Yeah, that one looks old, doesn't it? 1648, that is a long time ago. Very impressive. Take a look at this picture, taken looks like Edwardian times, from this street and from a position we're coming up to. And then we'll compare it with what it looks like now. And that's the same location today. Not a lot different. Right, that's it. Tansor Village done and dusted. Tricky one, that one. A lot of old buildings there I didn't really know a whole lot about, but visually it was interesting. I hope you found something of interest too. Good to get inside the church, that was a novelty. I wasn't expecting that, otherwise I might have done a bit of research so I could tell you a little bit more about it, but a bit of a mixed bag of a church really, a bit of a mixed bag of an entire village. especially with Tansor Court, which was always going to be the star attraction, but I just couldn't get any footage of it. I couldn't get over the wall, couldn't get my camera over the wall to view it, so I had to put a photograph up in the end and make do with that. And grateful to Nico Williams of Grantham, a photographer, who let me use one of his photographs there, because there aren't many of those on the internet either. I hope you found something of interest, and as ever, please, add your thoughts, add your comments on Peterborough Images or on YouTube. If I've got anything wrong, or even if I've got something right, do let me know. Otherwise, as I say, thanks for joining me, and we will meet again, no doubt, next time I go out. Many thanks.